session for January the 10th, 2012. Happy New Year to everybody. And next thing on the agenda is citizen comments for things that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to address this group tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 3, Wi-Fi project update by Mr. Banner.
We're going to have Fred Banner, our Municipal Information Technologies Director, and Mike Proctor join us. One of the things our IT team has been working on with others in the organization is developing our Wi-Fi network and fiber related to that as well that'll help that really impact and improve city services in a number of different areas. And I'd like to give you an overview of where we are and what some next steps are with that project. So Fred, Mike, take it away.
Back in
How about a microphone? Oh, there you go.
Back in 2005, we started several projects. We started 800 megahertz radio. We started City Fiber Network. We did a voice over IP phone upgrade to our phone system, and we also started Wi-Fi. We added municipal management software, financial application package. We started revamping our GIS mapping and added some features of public safety. Carl Alexander came a couple of work sessions ago and went over some of the mapping updates that we've done. And we will be updating you in future work sessions on some of these other projects. But we're nearing the end of our Wi-Fi project, and Mike is going to show you what we've got on the screen and how we work with the system and give you a little more information about the system. Any questions you got, please stop us as we're going.
So this is our management application here that we use for the access points, and this map here just shows all of our backhaul locations where we have existing fiber that the network connects to throughout the city. You'll notice there's nothing up towards Fieldstone Farms, Mac Hatcher yet, or Cool Springs area. I can zoom in here and you can see all the nodes up here that are in downtown area. The lines interconnecting, this is kind of like a cellular network for your phone. So each color is a Wi-Fi cell, and all those nodes talk within themselves. And then if when you roam to a different cell on your laptop. So that's kind of just what this is, our management application. You can see at the top. Sorry, other map. Out of screen. I'm having to remote to my computer at my desk to get this like it's.
Because this unit is ready to go by the wayside.
We've got 215 nodes that are active on here. I was trying to show you, it's got it listed at the top. There's 215 nodes that are powered up and working right now. There's 23 that we cannot talk to because we don't have fiber in the correct areas yet.
Where are those?
It's mostly up towards Fieldstone, up Hillsborough Road, and the Cool Springs area. And the top project that we're trying to wrap up right now is going to connect to all of the Cool Springs area. So we've got a few segments of fiber we're going to show you in a minute that we need to finish to get us around to Hillsborough Road, around the sewer plant, and back down into Water Hill, where the water department is right now.
Talk about some of the city services that really work off of this.
So currently, the street department, codes, and water are using this right now. We've actually put one of the mobile nodes in our camera truck, so as they TV the sewer lines and inspect them from the field, they can upload the video back here to the servers, and then anybody here can review it if they need to. So that's working live. Street department's using it. There's a few in codes that are starting to use it now, that as they do inspections in the field, whether they approve it or pass the inspection or fail the inspection, they do their notes in the field. It gets updated on the database back here, and if say it's electrical, it automatically gets emailed to Middle Tennessee Electric to have the electrical service turned on. So that kind of eliminates anywhere from 8 to 2 hour to 6 hour delay on getting a service notice to Middle Tennessee Electric on that. They're logging into it just like they're using it if they'd be at their desk. So they have everything they can have inside the building they have out in their vehicles. Email, we've actually tested a little bit with voice over IP phone through the network, and actually use the phone from their laptop if they need to, so they wouldn't have to use a personal cell phone or a city cell phone. It looks like they're calling from their desk.
So codes department, streets department, and what else?
Water department right now. That's all that we're using it right now. We're testing a few in each department, seeing what their needs are, making sure we get a few core users trained. And then as they get trained, we're going to start branching out to more people.
And what do you say, what's that branching from?
Eventually, it encompass anybody that works in the field, whether it's planning, going out doing landscape inspections, or and eventually to fire and police, and so they'll get better service with this.
How would fire use it?
Well, right now they use a cellular card to connect to the network. So every time there's a fire department dispatch, they get it on their their mobile data computer in their vehicle. It gives them all the call information, their pre-plans that they've decided if it's a fire or whatever, and then their mapping location tells them how to get to it in case there's a road closure and all that. So all that goes through cellular network currently. The long-term goal is to move them onto this network and eliminate that cellular cost that we pay for each vehicle.
Are there potential for live video?
Yes.
To see the fire and you sit in your office?
It can be if that's what a desire is, and we have cameras in the fire vehicles. Right now, police department has it for their arresting and all that stuff, so that's separate. But there's no cameras in a police apparatus or fire apparatus right now. So that's one other map here I'll show you. This is we did a drive test, so this is the coverage area that we're getting right now. All this blue and green and yellow, mainly in downtown, is our better coverage areas. You'll notice out here at West Haven, we go out 96 West, and then we don't have any nodes inside of West Haven yet. You'll see up here at Fieldstone, there are nodes inside of Fieldstone. We didn't do a drive test up there because we don't have fiber, and we know our throughput's not going to be what we need. And the same thing here at Cool Springs. We did a little bit of drive, and you can see how it goes to red is very low and black is no throughput. So we have lots of nodes around Cool Springs. We just don't have any fiber backhaul to get that data back here to City Hall to the servers yet.
How do you put the nodes in?
They hang there. If you look on outside, there's a white box with two white antennas sticking up. They either hook onto a light pole, they tap onto the light sensor on top of the street lights, or
So you don't dig the street up to do this?
no. These are all wireless.
What about the fiber?
Now the fiber is, the fiber we've ran on the city streets was that black line that was in the streets you saw.
What happened to that?
It's all working. We've connected all but 3 city offices with that and eliminated, we used to have had paid circuits between each office back here. So all that's running on our own network, which we've probably saved, I think it's a little over $12,000 a year we're saving just in part of the phone services, not counting the network services,
Through what we have put in.
through what we're putting in the streets.
That stuff actually is being utilized, that stuff that we put in.
Yes, we're using it.
Years ago is being utilized.
Yes. Yeah, it's our backbone for everything now. Everything on the outline offices, all their phone systems run out of City Hall. So we've eliminated individual phone lines at all the outlying offices. We left one for emergency or faxing. So if in case a fiber gets cut, they have a way to call 911 or make certain calls. But all the phone services go through City Hall now. We share it across our own fiber network to them.
It's good to hear, because I was concerned that all that we put in the streets years ago was just lying dormant.
Understood. We're using it.
The other part though is, what happened on the T-dot and everything that said, don't put anything in our street.
Well, we're using their right-of-ways.
Yeah, our fiber is on, it's in the streets, it's in the right-of-way, and it's on poles. There are certain areas where you could not put it in the right-of-way, and there are certain areas where there's solid rock. We have found a lot of other entities' fibers when we put ours in that we didn't know was there. We didn't cut theirs, but we've had to alter some of our paths because of what's not there. We hope in the future that we have did you get one? office. Got my one short. You got one.
I got one.
Thanks. That's right.
So we've run into some situation. Of course, you've got to go over a stream. You can't go underneath the stream bed. Of course, crossing the Harpeth, you've got to go up and over. And you got to get TDEC approval, and a lot of it's TDOT's approval. What we have left on the map we're going to show you are the 6 areas that we need to concentrate on, if you want.
Yeah, so this little map we passed out, there's 6 segments we need to complete our loop. So, we've got a redundancy site at Fire Station 6. So for our fiber that we've got along Machatcher on the southern side of the city, we have one path to Fire Station 6. And our goal when we started this project was to have a complete loop around City Hall, or the city of Franklin. That way we had 2 connections leaving City Hall and 2 connections going into Station 6. That way if anything got cut, we would have a redundant path around the city. So segment 1 leaves there at the roundabout there at Station 6 and goes in the conduit that they've put in with McEwen, the McEwen Drive extension. So we're looking to pull fiber into that section. Same thing at segment 2, when Harpeth Valley, Harpeth Valley put that new water line in. They also put conduit in for us along the edge of the road there. So we're going to our plan is to pull fiber in there. Segment 3, we've got it aerially all the way to the from Machatcher and Franklin Road to Little Course, and we're going to have to, or we have it underground to that point. We're going to go aerially up to Mallory Station there. Section 4, with a part of a top project, we put in the conduit along Machatcher. We just don't have any fiber in it yet. So we've got the pathways already in the ground there. We're going to try and pull our fiber in at that point. And at point 5, that goes to the wastewater plant. We're paying for a connection there so they can get their data from City Hall. 6 is kind of a iffy thing because of Hillsborough Road. And also, we're talking with Middle Tennessee Electric about the line they're running over to Harlansdale there. And we think we can use that pathway to get back to City Hall through there and stay off of Hillsborough Road with our fiber. But these are the 6 segments we need to bring some more nodes online and also complete our loop to give us a better redundancy at Station 6 with our failover site.
And there's a TOC project that's already been filed to go up to Fire Station 4, so that will complete that.
That's the one on the top up there?
Yes, where it says TOC project. They've already filed some paperwork for grant money on that one.
And one area that, if you'll see conduit installed in the bottom, that is conduit that goes all the way down to the Berry property. There is no fiber, but when wastewater was running the lines down through there, they included conduit for us so that we could come back and get fiber there at some point in time.
Is this on the side of the road?
Could be.
Going
In
down?
the middle?
No,
Those wiggly
depends.
lines?
Well, no, all of this is not in the roadway. The conduit installed, the bottom going down to Berry, it's however how the water line ran, or the wastewater, whichever way.
What all this allows us to do is have greater capacity in terms of the data we can put through and the work we can do through in our crews, whether they're a neighborhood resource officer, whether it's a police officer, a streets crew, can all do work, file the kind of paperwork they need to do, but stay active and stay out and provide service, as opposed to having to come back and do reports or get paperwork or get the next job or whatever. This helps us be more active, more out in the community doing the work that our crews are assigned to do, whatever those are. And then this also helps us avoid a lot of operational costs that we're incurring now that we have to use the cellular network to help us deliver. We think long-term have better dependability, better quality, and support more of our services with this initiative. And we're doubling up on efforts that help expand the Traffic Operations Center's capacity and reach as well. So that same fiber that helps them also can help us provide this improved Wi-Fi service, especially as we look at the northern frame of the city that is kind of the last piece to finish.
We've already started connecting along the southern side traffic intersections with the TOC, so they're already utilizing the existing fiber for some of their projects now too.
And we have been asked by Williamson County and Brentwood to hook onto our network too, so there's an opportunity for revenue.
Schedule on Cool Springs area.
Cool Springs area should be done in the next 60 days. It's the fiber's in, we've already started testing, we've already started placing some of the switches out there. It's close. And then we'll have camera feeds from the whole Cool Springs area that the TOC's been working on. And we'll have our wireless nodes up out there.
Great, good job.
We need to cover?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Number 4, consideration renewal of liquor license retailer certificate for Bard Quillman Jr. Red Dog Wine and Spirits. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're going to remove 5 and 6 from the discussion tonight and move on to number 7, discussion regarding charter change in an aldermanic at-large mayoral election, selection of one of 4 aldermanic positions or mayoral position.
We wanted to have a discussion with the board on where we might go with additional charter change. One of the issues that came through in the last election was it's clear in the charter that you can't serve in more than one position, but it's not specifically forbidden to run for more than one position in the same election cycle. So we'd like to clarify that, and that is, I think, particularly important given the change in the at-large alderman to by slot, election by slot, so that you don't have someone running for 3, 4, or 5 positions in the same election. While it's clear you can't serve that way, we're not as direct about you not being able to run that way. And in our discussions with the election officials, we determined that we ought to make that clarification, and that's essentially what we'd like to put on the table as a clarification in our charter. So, take any feedback? Seems like common sense, but...
So how do you word it?
We'll just go in and just add one sentence that says, you know, each candidate for a position must pick one position and qualify for that position.
within that election cycle.
Now, that doesn't mean they can't pull petitions. They can pull as many as they want, but they can only turn in one when they decide what they want to do.
For both aldermanic and mayor?
No, they can only run for one position.
You'd have to pick
You
one.
can't run for everything.
You can't run for alderman and mayor, or one of the 4.
Multiple aldermen.
Multiple.
When do we get to know it as to whether we're A, B, C, or D, or, I mean, it's not obviously a hot button item, but is it done alphabetically, or?
I would suggest alphabetically.
That's probably the easiest way to do
Because
it.
it doesn't really make a difference at this point.
And that occurs after the legislature, well, it comes back to us?
Whether or not you can vote or run.
Or do we have to do anything else to?
Well, we would have to pass a resolution. Remember, it has to pass, they like to see it at least 2/3 passed on the first resolution reading. And then we take it to the state votes on it, and then they send it back to us, and we would have to vote on it again. Unless you would want that to go to a referendum, which on this matter, I would say just let you vote on it when it comes back.
Yeah, the advice from talked with Representative Sargent earlier this week, and his advice was just, with these private acts, just the sooner you can get them in, the better, so that they can get in the process. So if everyone's comfortable, we'll draft that proposed charter change for our next meeting. Again, it's pretty straightforward. It's a sentence or two that clarifies this issue, and bring that back to you at our next meeting.
Wonderful.
Now, it doesn't, I just happen to think, it doesn't preclude a sitting alderman to run for mayor.
It would not.
Now, you know, I'm talking about one of the wards.
Yes, no, it wouldn't. It's within that cycle that we're saying. If a seat or multiple seats are up in that cycle, you've got to pick which one you're running for. But if you were a ward alderman and you wanted to run for mayor, you could do that.
If you're a sitting, because if you were sitting at large, you'd either have to choose.
You have to choose what you're running for.
You have to choose it.
Yeah. Yes.
If you're off that cycle, yes, okay.
It's by the election
Then you'd
cycle
have
and
to
the
give up
seats that
your
are up
seat.
in that, yeah.
Then you would have to give up your seat. Say you were a ward alderman, you ran for mayor, you won, you'd have to give up your alderman seat.
You would be on the same cycle anyway, so you would have to choose which office you're running for.
You could
You're-
either.
Oh, you're in the ward, yeah,
No,
you'd have
ward
to,
would be
yes,
on.
yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
Alderman or
Ward.
mayor.
No, you can't. There are different cycles.
Yeah.
No, I'm an old ward alderman, ran for mayor and I won, then I didn't
Then
give
you'd
up my
have to,
seat.
right, correct.
Okay.
But it already says that. I mean,
That's already covered, yeah.
that, yeah, you can't hold two.
We're not changing anything like that.
No, it's just whether or not you can run for two.
It's really the election process that we're
Yeah,
clarifying.
hold two, we know that.
Yeah.
Number 8, consideration of proposed ordinance 2012-01, an ordinance to amend Title I, Section 102 of the Franklin Municipal Code relative to the order of business meetings of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Well, this has come to our attention that the existing municipal code defines a specific order of business and specifically where the approval of the meeting minutes and the public comment goes. And for at least 15 years, we've done it in a different order than what the municipal code says. We would like to clarify that issue as well, or actually make that more general in nature so that it's not as prescriptive in terms of the exact order that they go. I would suggest the order that you've been using makes more sense because you provide public comment before the board makes action. You provide public comment as early in the meeting as possible, which to me makes a lot of sense. But to alleviate that issue, we would suggest a change in the municipal ordinance that just clarifies that we publish our agenda and the order of business, and that really provides for that. We don't get into the specifics of all the items that are included on that agenda. That is a simpler, clearer way to do it.
And it gives you the freedom to make your agendas the way you want to make them. Sometimes, you know, you'll have a large amount of citizens who want to comment, so you'll move things around your agenda to accommodate for the citizens who want to speak. And that just gives you more freedom to be able to do that. If you know a lot of people want to speak on a citizen comment, you can add that first and move things around that way. And it gives staff the ability to create those agendas for you, which we apparently don't have at this point.
And the other thing, I believe it was outdated in the sense that the reports from the committees came at the end, and then really we don't do it that way.
Yeah, it probably made sense at one point, but at this point, we define our agendas as we work through the various meetings, we publicize them. There's clear opportunity to understand how we're doing our business, so to be this specific doesn't really seem to make sense at this point. So that would be the change we would propose there as well.
Number 9, consideration of proposed ordinance 2012-02, an ordinance to amend Title 3, Chapter 2, Section 3-208 of the Franklin Municipal Code relative to the collection of court costs.
We had a discussion at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting related to this issue in part in late November, early December, whenever that meeting was. And the specific code change that we would like to talk about is one that allows for some flexibility. The current language says that we have to, if we decide to use collection services, we have to bid for that contract or award that contract annually. Not sure why we want to get into prescribing that happens every year. We would like to have the flexibility to do multiple years or a year with an option, that sort of approach. We just like the flexibility, and it's essentially removing the reference to contracting annually on that. That's the specific change we would like. We are continuing to look at how we would move forward with providing this as part of our business process, and I can let Steve talk a little more about that process as well, if you'd like.
That, I believe, is supposed to come back to the Budget and Finance Committee at its next meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
But we're just really right now looking at the idea of whether we need to award the contract annually.
That's the specific issue, yeah. So if there.
Because we thought that on the committee, we might wish to make some specific recommendations to the board, but needed more information that has been provided.
Yes.
And so I'm assuming that's going to be on the agenda?
Yes.
So this will go back to your committee?
Yes.
In terms of the specific
That's right.
business process, I guess I would say, this is more the,
Right now, we're just voting on giving them the opportunity to have a long-term relationship with someone.
yeah, more than 1 year at a time.
Are we voting on that tonight?
No, it's just for preparation in your next meeting.
Because it doesn't start, so. All right, talking about tonight, it'll go back to the committee, and then we'll bring it back forward.
Correct.
Go ahead, Mr. Sims.
Well,
Is that enough?
That says it all. I can't add to that.
Number 10 then.
All right, very good.
Consideration of adoption of the revised pension plan summary document.
This is really just a regular process that we need to go through to adopt our summary plan. It's something that is part of the requirements of the IRS, that we provide those on a regular basis as we update our plan. Last September, the board took action to amend and update our plan, and this just captures all of that and brings that forward, and we need the board action to kind of bring closure to that. Is that covered?
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Number 11, consideration of sole source purchase from SolarBee Incorporated of Dickinson, North Dakota, in the total amount of $57,030 for one SolarBee floating solar-powered water circulation equipment to be installed at the raw water reservoir.
This is a process and system improvement we think can help us here. I'll let Mark go through the specifics of it.
Sure. As you know, the customers of City of Franklin get their water from one of two surface water treatment plants. As I'm sure you recall, this past summer, we had a large blue-green algal blooms, not only in Nashville, Franklin, other places across the country. This is not an issue isolated to Middle Tennessee. It's across the country and across the world. We've been doing research because of the intense problems that we had across Middle Tennessee. We've been doing a lot of research to develop what we think would be a good course of action to help reduce the potential for this to happen in the future. And I state it that way because I will not tell you will not have taste and odor issues in the future. But let me step through the research, why we're looking at this piece of technology, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. The technology we are looking at, we opted for, we're looking at solar simply because we don't want to have the issues with dropping an electrical service out there and having electrical lines out in the raw water reservoir. The two primary technologies we looked at to reduce the development of blue-green algae was a sonic type solution, which essentially killed the algal growth and then prevented growth from occurring in the future. So you reduce that amount of blue-green algae growth in the summer. The other option we looked at was aeration of the lake, which we saw had an added value to it. It introduced a significant amount of oxygen to the water, which helps in treatment through the plant by reducing the amount of manganese and iron, which ultimately reduces the amount of chemicals that you need to use during the treatment processes. So we were looking at those two technologies. We felt aeration was a more appropriate one in our case. I've talked to a number of other municipalities that have deployed these types of equipment for the specific purpose of reducing taste and odor issues associated with blue-green algae growth. Or it's actually the death of the blue-green algae, but is the issue. But the conversations I've had with people who've deployed this equipment, they've been very pleased. They've noticed a response within several days, though it does take a period of time to actually fully become effective. The estimates range from a month to 2 months, and that's why we're looking at it at this case. That's why we're looking at it at this period of time, not May, April timeframe. We want to kind of get ahead of it if we choose to go in this direction. The equipment is not specifically budgeted. As you know, we did our budget prior to all of this, but we do anticipate there's some equipment at the water plant that we will not have to purchase this fiscal year, and we'll likely carry them forward with a budget amendment into FY 2013. So that is the quick of it, and if I'd be happy to talk about it or further or answer questions or.
There's a picture.
It's a whirly gig.
Yeah, there's a.
I see this.
Yeah, that bottom, I guess, post is submerged in the water. And what it essentially does is it
You don't see a whole lot from the surface.
it's a pretty low profile.
How big is it?
I don't know the specific size. I'll be able to, I'd say it's larger, it's probably maybe twice the size of these two tables area.
Okay.
It's a
But
large
it's
unit.
not something, was it, with the water?
The water,
up like
no,
it does
it's not a
Because
fountain.
what we're thinking about the ones that
Yeah,
are in
with-
some small areas that, have to. go
Ponds
down.
that
It
have.
really works subsurface.
But it's
Yes.
something, but it's
Across the
something.
pond
Yeah.
and goes down in
It's something like
and
that,
comes
though,
back
in the
up
sense
the
that it-
surface.
Right,
This one.
it sits in the middle of the lake. It'll bring water up from a central point and
Pushes it back
and
down.
radially put it out.
So it's stationary in the center
Yes,
of the
sir.
lake.
The key component here, I think, is the capacity of this unit, as well as the fact that it's a solar-powered unit, which has some benefit to it, as well as Mark described. So I think that's what pushes us towards this being a sole source item. We have not found anything that combines those together. There are other circulating units out there, but ones that get us to this capacity, is solar-powered, and does what this has been identified to be able to do, we think is what makes this unique. So sole source is a unique thing. We try not to do that very often because we want to get in competitive purchasing environments as much as possible, but we just don't see that with this specific need at this point.
Go ahead, Alderman Berger.
Got a couple questions
Sure.
about the company. First of all, let's go back to the budget for a second. There were some funds that you said you didn't use in the budget, correct?
Right.
So do we have a shortfall from that, or will we have enough from the budget that you have not?
The items that we have in mind specifically are the rate of flow valves, and I think there's $175,000 budgeted for those items at the water plant this
You
year.
have enough, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay.
You're ultimately going to have to do those at some point, but I think Mark and staff feels that those are ones that can continue to be deferred a little further out.
Correct.
And that provides capacity in this budget. Now, it may push those into a 2013 or beyond budget.
Yeah, but no one's calling down here demanding that we do the rate of flow valves.
Yeah, so,
I have not received that call.
It's not in
yeah,
budget.
That's my
it's the
point.
trade-off that we make, yes.
All right, and then, let me ask you, so this would be able to be installed before the summer months?
Yes, ma'am.
Before we need it this year. And what is the warranty on that? I know that it says in here the company comes and they install it in order to keep the warranty intact, but what is that warranty?
It's on this page right here.
I'm looking for it and we missed it.
But, they had that.
Where it says
thing that was sent
currency.
out to us by Linnea, also added options for a service contract.
There is an
Yeah.
option for a service contract, and that's,
Did we look at that?
I think we can go either way. I'm not, don't feel strongly one way or the other
That's what it
on
is.
that one.
How much does it cost?
I'll dig that information up. I don't have that in my
Cost
head.
and look at the payoff on that.
Sure, sure.
What was the other thing is that, how long's the company been around and what's the references as far as?
The references that I...
Their time in business?
They've been around, and I don't know specifically how long they've been around, but it's a solid performer in the industry. Solarbee's been around, I would say, at least 15 to 20 plus years, but I can get a specific date for you and email it to Eric and have him send it back out to the board. It's not a brand new company that that do not have untested equipment. So we have some confidence in Solarbee.
I don't need to know the day, just make sure that you would take a look at that.
Yep.
Alderman Skinner?
Yeah, this, to many of the neighborhoods in southeast Franklin, this summer, the odor and smell issue was as significant as our shortages back in the drought year. So I'm glad to see that we're doing something to look into this. I know some other issues were water pressure versus from our plant versus what we get from ARPA. Are we addressing those issues too?
And really, it's difficult to make a distinction. Once the water comes into the system, you'll have pressure gradients throughout, so it's all, with the exception of a couple of pressure zones, it's all one pressurized system. But the areas that we did run into a pressure issue this past summer, we had recently brought online the Southeast Water Line Distribution Project, And you've heard the discussions of the Southeast Booster Station, which should be coming up online, certainly ready before the summer months, and we anticipate that that's not going to be an issue this summer. Barring any catastrophic problems, that is to say.
Yeah.
So.
And I wouldn't necessarily talk about the pressure at our valves and things, but the pressure that was keeping water from the water plant kind of in the southeast area, where there was a difference in pressure coming in from water.
Okay, so I guess pulling the water from, isolating the water. Yeah, that's merely getting all that taste and odor water out of the system, and you have to directionally valve and make sure the water goes in the direction you want it to make sure. And that sometimes can be a challenge when you're trying to maintain water service and you're putting a lot of water on the ground to maintain quality, so you still have to make sure your tanks are in good shape so you don't run out of water and things like that. So that was kind of the challenge when we were pulling the
other
water.
thing was we found that there were some dead-end lines in some of the newer neighborhoods that were again preventing the water from circulating. And
Right.
was isolating some of the worst odors and tastes in those dead-end lines.
Right.
Are there any things that we can do to help make those circular lines maybe at some point?
Recent years, and I can't speak before 5 years ago, but we've been looking at projects to address existing dead-end lines. There's Jameson Station is actually one of the development projects that's helping with that. There's a number of other projects that we've done in-house to connect dead-end lines together. As far as in the future, through the planning process, we look at new water infrastructure to certainly avoid dead-end lines if at all possible. We go to great lengths to ensure that does happen. As far as addressing existing dead-end lines that are still in service, we do go out and flush the lines on a routine basis. Areas that we have identified as potential problem areas, we'll put on automatic flushing devices to make sure that water continues to flow.
Well, I think so by experience that was particularly frustrating this last summer.
It was.
People that couldn't afford to water their yards were watching thousands of gallons go down the street.
A lot of gallons, yes. A lot of water went down the street. We feel that an investment of $57,000 would certainly help reduce that tremendously.
Alderman Blanton,
I'm good.
are you good? Alderman Peterson?
We're talking about a particular ward there, but really, south of 96, period, had the problem. It wasn't just that ward.
It was throughout the city, it was throughout Nashville.
I know, but I'm just saying.
There are varying degrees in different places, but yeah.
We were probably the most.
And you're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
Primary calls did come in the southern portion of the city.
Just to follow up, Mr. Hilke, did I hear you correctly that you had talked to other municipalities and they are using this system and they love it and it's the answer to their prayers? Correct?
We always need to issue the caution.
Okay.
And we said this throughout the summer when we were dealing with this issue, there's not a silver bullet. There are things you can do that try to help address it and minimize it, and this is one of those steps. We think this does it on a wider scale than some of the other methods. So I want to caution anybody to say that this solves the problem. We don't know that it does, but we think from other experiences with people who use surface water, use a reservoir similar in size to ours, that have had some positive results with this technology. So that's why we're optimistic that it will help.
And that's what I exactly wanted to have for the record.
Okay.
Yes.
We did talk to 2 communities in Georgia. So we did look at regionally, and we also spoke with a couple of others throughout the country. So they seemed to be very pleased, and I think the installs in those situations were relatively new to 10-plus years. So they've had them in the ground for a period of time in some cases.
Do you position this near where the intake is, or?
It would be generally located in the center of the lake, and
10-day plus turnover rate? Did I see 14 million gallons per
It was
day?
at 14.4 million a day, so,
10 plus.
Right, about 10.
May have to be a field trip. See the instant.
Is there any ongoing maintenance to get the algae out of the equipment, or is there any concern if the lake were to freeze over?
If the lake were to freeze over, there are some maintenance activities that we're going to have to deal with, whether it's cleaning of it, the freezing aspects. We will certainly get the operation and maintenance manual and follow that appropriately. Quite honestly, I did not look specifically at the freezing aspect of it at this point.
Has anyone ever seen it freeze over?
I've seen ice out 30, 40 feet or so from the banks. I've not ice skated, no. So.
Well, listen, this company's from North Dakota. I think they know how to deal with those issues.
But there will be some ongoing maintenance activities. Specifically, I wouldn't be able to describe them to you.
Kicking you.
Number 12, discussion to consider the merits of proposed zoning ordinance amendment allowing for the limited use of temporary structures under certain conditions by businesses contemplating the renovation of their existing property.
I'll start this one off. This is an issue that came to our attention, really related to a specific project, but highlights it for an overall need in terms of redevelopment opportunities in the community. The Ford Lincoln dealer out on Murfreesboro Road approached us saying they're ready to do a major new investment there, basically build a new dealership facility in that location. But they want to continue to operate their business while they do that. Well, our existing ordinance does not provide for that opportunity. So we want to look at some ways to tie that to a redevelopment. The risk with a temporary structure is that the temporary structure becomes a permanent structure. And so we want to tie it to some elements of the redevelopment that would help make sure that doesn't happen. But we'd like to develop some ideas, get your feedback, and develop some ideas on how we would fit this into our ordinance, put this in the toolkit, if you will, for redevelopment. I will disclose I purchased a vehicle from this dealer in July. This is not an issue in the negotiations of the vehicle price or anything like that, but I do want to let you know that, just so that you know. And about a month or so ago, the managing partner called me and said, I'm running into this problem. I want to invest $6 million in Franklin, and I want to give a major facelift to this site. But I can't do it because I want to be able to keep operating my business. How do we find a way to do this? Had Vernon and some of our other staff do some brainstorming to get started on this. But we wanted to share this issue with you, get some feedback, and then maybe develop some more specific options or ideas from that, bring it through Planning Commission, bring it back to you. Let me turn over to Vernon to cover any other initial thoughts, and then we'll be glad to have some discussion with you about it.
Well, good evening and Happy New Year to everybody that I haven't seen. This section of the ordinance, as I outlined in my memorandum, it's very specific. In fact, it's so specific that it states that other temporary uses and structures that are not listed are prohibited. And this is one of those areas that is appropriate to have that language because, as Eric alluded to, when you have temporary uses, you don't want them to become permanent, or you don't want some broad interpretation. And I won't rehash over some of the things we all put in the memorandum, but we really want to narrowly define what a field office is. So those instances where we have an existing business already operating, and they want to remodel in their existing facilities, such as the example with the Ford Lincoln dealership, that we allow them the ability to keep operating. And it's only for office uses. It's not anything for where somebody will be displaying merchandise indoors for cash or carry. It's really about these types of businesses that otherwise would have to close their doors. And it's not uncommon that, other businesses may like to have that opportunity to pull up one or more trailers and operate while they're remodeling, but there's inherent problems with that. And one of the things that you've noticed in here that we would incorporate into the permit of it would be that they do have an approved potable water and sanitary sewer type system, or perhaps connected to it. That all our other development standards, to the extent possible, and there's discretion with that, would be applied as far as setback to reduce any impact on any adjacent neighbors. And then most importantly, that it's defined for a very finite time when they can use it. They have to have an approved plan and permits for the major renovation that they're going to make the investment. And that they also give us a surety bond that we can have it removed if they don't do it. And it's those types of things that communities use to work with businesses and help them grow.
And this is especially important when you look at corridors that have aged and need to be refreshed. You need to provide tools to reinvest and bring new life to those areas. And this is exactly the kind of thing we want to try to think of to provide, so.
Alderman Skinner and then Alderman Martin.
I know on here you said the limitations for it would be removing the structure within 30 days from the date of use and occupancy.
Yes.
Have you thought about an overall limit? So that if something happens and they have to have their site plan reapproved?
One of the things that we discussed as we're developing it, we put this together quickly, is that anything longer than a 12-month period, which would really require a significant reinvestment. Again, I want to emphasize this permit for a field office is for an existing business at their existing location so they can redevelop, reinvest it, and make a commitment to the community again. And, you know, anything longer than 12 months would be a pretty big redevelopment, and that might be something that we would have, we could include, if you prefer, to come to the board or the planning commission, because it would be such a significant project.
So currently now, site plans can be renewed. Remind me of what those limitations are. They're good for...
The initial is 6 months, okay, that they can remove. There is another 6 months that if, that they did to come for the board.
So these structures could be here as long as 2 years?
No, and if you see here, it's about from the start of construction.
It's tied to the construction.
To the building
not the
permit
site
of
plan.
construction,
Okay.
not the site plan. They have to start construction and keep going with it.
Alderman Martin.
On the first page, the last little bullet is tents. Is this the same situation that we had out there when they built that structure as a tent and we had to have it removed?
Actually, they never had gotten a permit for that and an approval. And that structure, that's what they had intended to do with it, but it wasn't tied to any type of approved site plan or redevelopment or building permit.
Is that the kind of tent we're talking about?
No, we're not talking tents. We're talking about modular units that would be brought on the site and that would be made accessible and also have some type of facade put in it. So we're really requiring a pretty significant investment for them to maintain their operation. Now, businesses can put tents on their property for a very short period of time, as we know, and there's a separate permit for that.
This is different than that issue.
Yeah.
That was a temporary structure that didn't really fit the definition of a tent, but this is a temporary structure that serves as a substitute for the building that's being replaced or renovated to allow for business to continue to operate during that construction period.
Alderman Peterson.
I also was concerned about a set amount of time within which they must have the work done. When we're talking about the building permit or the site plan, remember those have to have some actual work done, and then otherwise they lose the permit eventually, as you say. But technically, if you think about it, that could wind up being the 2-year period before they actually started construction. You see what I'm saying? I think that kind of a maximum length of time needs to be looked at.
We just wanted to get your input if you believe it's a good idea, because it would be tied to the building permit, that they are going to obtain the building permit, put the trailer up, work on that 30 to 60 days before, and then the construction activity has to proceed in a timely manner.
We'll see, though, that the building permit doesn't run out once they get started. So you see what I'm saying? You can do the 60 days. The building permit,
But then have a not to exceed or something, and
not to
then...
exceed, yes, because once they start on the building, the building permit issue becomes moot once they get started. So they can technically get started and then, take forever to...
Would you want to see a certain range, and then above a certain range comes to the planning commission or the board, or that kind of thing? Or we can work on some options, but,
Think
okay.
about it, it's just...
But we hear you, maximum time.
Doesn't need to be open-ended.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
And this is the type of input we're looking for.
The thing that's tricky is some construction projects take longer than others, so how do you allow for that? Just the range that you can get into, but we'll work through that issue.
And we run into some issues sometimes that are unforeseen that people have to deal with. This is great. I totally fully support us going ahead with something like this, because we need to encourage some renovations and remodeling of some of these businesses along 96 and some other places in town that want to do this in the future. So I'm glad we're doing this. The only thing is, I know that you said, it's not cash and carry. You don't come in and pick this up. But how does that affect a showroom where you have cars sitting there and that interfere with that?
In this, as far as we know with this particular property and project, their intention is to tear down the showroom, keep the service garage, which is attached to the rear of it, operational, reoccupy the showroom when it's built, the cars are outside, and then because they can't not have a service garage, they're going to break that into 3 different phases of remodeling the service garage and keep that operational. So you can see that it makes sense in the case of the showroom, where they're going to end up bringing cars back into, as well as the offices, to just do that at one time. In a case of a service garage, it doesn't.
Yeah, because they're still going to keep their service. Okay.
What I think I also wanted to emphasize, and I wanted to make sure before we brought this ordinance back, is that it applies to office-type uses, not retail. Like maybe where a convenience store would like to tear down and rebuild. It can't happen because you really have to have a place for merchandise, and it brings into a whole myriad of other issues. This is for office-type uses.
So they would still keep their cars on the,
yes,
on the property
yes.
as well? Okay.
Well, I'm very loud, apart from normal. It's obvious that it's set up more for like a mobile trailer type situation, because you talk about the skirting and things like that. But because it's not permanent, I personally think provisions for a distinct architecturally designed covered entrance might be a little bit, asking a little bit much. I don't know what the normal standards are, and I'm just saying, if it's not permanent, to put all of that money into something to make it look beautiful and have an architecturally designed entrance, I don't define what that means. I mean, is that something they gotta go, this is what the front's gonna look like, and is that gonna have to be approved?
There are a lot of modular units out that are available, and if that is something that other communities have used. They would need to install an accessible ramp for people with physical disabilities, and most likely include a covered type of awning of some sort, and a platform in which to open the door and access. If that is something you want to have removed, we can remove it. But given the intent here is that it's something reasonable, that not every business decides they want to have a temporary trailer outside while they're doing some remodeling. It's really about those businesses that are making a significant investment. And it's a tool for us to help facilitate that.
I have a hard time, I'll admit, I'm a man of limited imagination. But I have a hard time thinking through any other application for this besides a car dealer. It's not going to be retail, certainly not going to be a restaurant. It's going to be an office that can stay open while they rebuild on site and haul a beautiful trailer in for the duration of that rebuild.
It could be a car wash.
Distribution.
It could be an insurance office, a standalone insurance office. It could be an attorney's legal counsel office that are doing some significant remodeling.
Within a house.
There's a lot of standalone offices that could operate out of the office situation.
Well, yes, but, I mean, it just seems like most of those other places would, I don't know, it's difficult to envision both the need and logistics to accommodate. I mean, the car lot needs to do it because they have acres of car lots. If I need to rebuild my office, first of all, no one would let me so much as scrape paint off it, but but if I wanted to,
Yes. I mentioned you were a little lax in taste. But
Should have
Good imagination. I didn't say paint. But I mean, I'm perfectly willing to accommodate significant reinvestment. I just don't know that we need to go rewriting entire ordinances when a site plan and some variances or something specific to this goes, because the law of unintended consequences is just giving me the hair standing up on my neck right now. Because I think, again, not many businesses are going to be so wedded to their particular location that they would both knock it down and stay put all at the same place and time, other than a place like a car lot. I mean, okay, maybe a dentist or a doctor or a lawyer, maybe, but I'm not going to stick around for that. I'm leaving. I'll come back when they're done. You know, it's the unique combination of large lot of inventory. The only other thing that makes any sense to me would be if we had a distribution center where they really only needed limited office space, but they needed their operational acreage to not have to relocate. And it just seems to me, I mean, it just seems to me that there are so many more possibilities of things we did not intend to enable or even encourage by creating this ordinance of general application, that we might be better off saying, let's work with this applicant. And I don't know whether or not we can create variances and site plan conditions and so forth to accommodate this. I'm perfectly happy that they want to make a big investment. I think that's great. And I'll do what we need to do to make that happen. But so far, they're the first one to identify this. And as I sit here and think about the next one, I have a hard time putting my finger on the synthesis of things that have to come together to make someone need and want to both rebuild on site and stay there while they're doing it, that we would feel so strongly about trying to, I mean, maybe, but creating an ordinance to accommodate this one thing Because as soon as we do that, someone that we don't want to do that will come along and try to shoehorn themselves into this.
And that's why we wanted to narrowly define it, because it could be, we have a predominance of Class A office space here, that if the floors are taken in some of the multi-story structures we have, and they want to do some significant remodeling, it would allow them to have a temporary field office outside in their parking lot while they're doing that work. Retail businesses with drive-up entrances would like to probably have a trailer to keep their business going. And that's not what this ordinance is for.
I agree.
Yeah.
And that's why we're trying to narrowly define it in this particular area of temporary uses.
Right now, as we stand, we can't permit it at all. So we need some mechanism, whether it's a variance that is granted, very specifically, case by case, or something that's a little more defined. We need some mechanism.
I agree, and I want to be clear. I support getting out of the way of this particular reinvestment, okay? I'm for it. I bought a car there once, too. Okay?
Different owner.
But I think that's I'm glad that the problem has been identified. I'm just not sure that, none of us sitting here can think of another time or place that we would, as sure as we go and do this, someone will come along and say, "Me too," and we will say to them, "Oh, we didn't mean you," but we won't be able to.
But it does cause us to come back and talk through it. And these types of field offices should be, again, very limited, but it is a tool for us to use.
I just don't
Let's look at how we
see-
write it to maybe address that.
Well,
I think there might be
I
some.
mean, and for what it's worth, real large-scale renovations of grade A office space, I just don't see them hauling trailers up to Primus and renovating 30,000 square feet. That's just not been, I mean, downtown Nashville renovates skyscrapers internally regularly. That happens. And they don't pull law offices out into the yard to do it. But there's someone more clever than me who would figure out a way to try to shoehorn into this that none of us would have thought this is what we were after.
Alderman Berger.
I agree with Dana to a certain extent, but I don't think that we should so narrowly define it that it just fits car dealerships. I think it should be able to be wide enough to define, to fit like a distribution. Like a lot of people that have distribution have their materials off-site anyway in storage places, but then they have a showroom. And I even know of a company that does internet sales and does website design and internet sales. And there was also, I know specifically, it's not in this community, but this happened, it's sort of identical to what's happening here, a plumbing place. And they usually go out to their customers, they're commercial. And they do have an office, and they had a small area where people could come in, but most of the time they went out to their people. But they still had not quite a showroom because, who wants to see plumbing supplies, but they had some kind of multiple, I don't know exactly what they did, but I just remember them redoing it on site. This was in a totally different state. But distribution, plumbing, internet sales, things like that. I'm not so worried about the Me Too scenario that Dana's describing, except if we didn't narrowly define it. And I think that's what you're talking about, Vernon. You're talking about describing this more, getting more definition into it, so we don't have all the Me Too scenarios happening. And I'd be fine with that and comfortable with that. Something that Brandy brought up was about the skirting of the trailer, the provisions for, and I was reading here too, and I noticed that too, and I thought,
They're going to spend as much money for temporary, not as much.
and I agree with that. Provisions for distinct, that word distinct got me. Architecturally designed covered entrance. I don't think that we need to worry about being distinct when we're talking 12 months or less, or possibly even more, less than 2 years or a year and a half. Then the skirting of the trailer to match the siding materials, I don't care if it matches. You know, if it's going to be there 2 and 3 years, yeah.
This for 3 years.
3 years?
I've got
What is the ramifications of that? I mean, what are the time limits?
We're decorating again.
And I'm not interested in decorating, although I don't think, you know, it needs to be some kind of neutral thing going on there. I don't think we need howdy-doody colors and all that kind of stuff. But I think the fact that the word distinct, the skirting to match the sides and stuff, I think, you know, I'm agreeing with Brina here. We don't want to get too carried away.
Alderman Martin.
I would like to see us be proactive instead of reactive, and I think that's what you're doing here, is you're making it so that if something comes, just because we don't know what it's going to be, doesn't mean it's not going to come tomorrow. So I would like to see us have something on the books to take care of this and have it as restricted as we need to do it, so that if it does stay there 3 years, we have some kind of control over it, being proactive instead of reactive.
I've got Alderman Skinner, then Alderman McClendon, then Alderman Barnhill. This is a...
Wow. Yep. I've seen this application in fast food where it's been a long-term lease on a place that's been there 10 or 15 years, and they actually tore the restaurant down to the ground, and temporarily they had something temporary on the site so that they wouldn't lose business while they were going through that transition to build a new unit.
If we're going to do it, then I'm not so sure that we want to limit it to an existing place doing a reinvestment on site. For example, there's what has been a car lot on Fifth Avenue. It's currently vacant. If someone wanted to, if someone wanted to go in there now, set up some trailers, knock down the building and start over, that to me is as worthwhile a reason to accommodate as someone who, I mean, I wouldn't make them move into the building, then move out of the building to knock it down. You see what I'm saying? We got a place that somebody could do exactly this right there, and they might like to go ahead and get started. And go ahead and bring, you know, if we were going to let this happen, bring some trailers in, set it up on a temporary basis, and get started. So if we're going to do this, then I don't know that it makes a ton of sense to just arbitrarily say, you can only apply for this permission if you're actually sitting there doing this now. If we're encouraging reuse, reinvestment, and new investment, then, you know, we might as well say, if you have a great idea for an existing place but you're not currently there, let us know.
If I may just quickly, I suspect that's the reason why all other temporary uses, that language was specific, put in here, because you know, you have some businesses that make an investment to build and develop a site, and many of them would then like to come and pull up a trailer to start their business.
Well,
that's really a big policy issue, and it's inherent with a lot
well,
of
let me
other
be clear.
concerns.
This would, in any of these events, this thing is hitched to a site plan, to me. I mean, none of, this is all a non-starter if you're not, if it's not conditioned upon and hitched to a bona fide site plan. No, I don't want someone coming in talking about, well, I plan to reinvest. No. You bring it all in at one time, and
This
it's
is
all
part of a
conditional.
bigger project.
They are linked. They are linked from the get-go. I'm not suggesting that we let people test the water and see if they can make enough to make the investment. That's not what I mean. If someone wanted to get started on Fifth Avenue, under the ordinance as proposed, we would have to tell them, well, move in, make this application, then move out into the parking lot, and we can help you. That doesn't make much sense to me. If we're gonna let people make investments but also operate on site while they do it, then I don't know that we need to require that they first be there doing it. But in all circumstances, the the commitment to investment is a condition precedent to the temporary operation of business on site. That to me is a must.
Alderman Barney.
What is the time frame for the passage of this if you get some good feeling as to what the board wants out of this right here?
Well, the intent would be, and you've offered us very good feedback, but it's diverse feedback, that we would draft something up and likely bring it to the Planning Commission meeting in February. Because it's going to take us time. Maybe we can have this as another topic of discussion on the workshop in January. We'll have to see, to get some more feedback on it, now that this was the first time we shared it with you. And then it would require 3 readings before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and hopefully by April or so, we could have it, something adopted to go forward with.
Well, let me, let me tell you, as far as I'm concerned, I can live with a variance for this particular business. And if there's another business that comes up and has the similar situation or whatever, we deal with that. But to go through and try to be as specific as we are on this, to limit what we're trying to limit, to try to make sure that we don't have an issue come up and we're asking for skirts on the trailer, and we're asking for whatever else that we're asking for on that. We're looking at putting $6.5 million in a business out there. They are, and it's a specific operation that they're wanting to do. I think Dana's comment on as far as Fifth Avenue is a good comment. I see that as being a non-existent business. You can go in there now with your site plan and do whatever you needed to do of that particular business without a trailer there. I don't have a problem in having a variance specific to that one particular item that we're being asked to discuss tonight, if that's possible.
It's not possible because the ordinance is specific to it's a prohibited use, so we need to amend the ordinance.
We need to do some kind of amendment.
Some kind of an amendment.
At a minimum, enough to provide for their ability to do a variance of this nature, or something more specific down the line too. We could look at a short-term and a long-term issue, a resolution on this too. That might be something to
And
look at.
the other thing is, in creating the amendment, having a variance is more process to go through. We were trying to put something in place that wouldn't necessarily need yourselves to approve unless it was over a longer period of time. It would be part of the site plan that staff would administer as a redevelopment tool. Let us go back and look at it. At least, thank you for giving the input. It's wonderful, very helpful.
So when are they wanting to do the project?
Very soon.
As soon as they can. That's the other.
And that's the other thing, is I don't want to see us drag our feet on this, because that area over there,
Remind me again when I
that
do
needs redevelopment. We need to help move.
We're here because we want to help one business, but we want to help all businesses. It's a tool that's not in our toolbox, and we'll get some there. And as long as you're open to the concept, we'll put something before you, and hopefully we can come to consensus and move forward.
You're helping the city of Franklin.
Pardon me?
You bet.
You're helping the city of Franklin.
Yes.
With a $6.5 million investment in modernization of a really nice airport. We'd be helping Homewood, Lincoln, or whatever it is, but you're helping the city.
Absolutely.
Number 13, consideration of contract award to Lambie and Associates in the amount of $174,000, $174,994 for the development of the architectural and engineering design for the new City of Franklin Public Works facility. The material in your package gives the correct.
Yeah, it's 174,994. That number is not right, that's on the agenda. Oh, okay. That number got updated. But what we're working with is, this is an architect that we identified through a request for qualifications process. They did provide us with some assistance when we were assessing this site and this opportunity last fall, and we have done some further due diligence and feel that they would be a good entity to move forward with this project. Right now, what we have is a letter proposal attached to this. The professional services agreement has not been reached final draft form yet, so we would hope to provide that as a companion to this. We have not been able to do that yet, but did want to at least give you the basics of what we're looking at. This would provide design services and engineering services for the redevelopment of that site for our Public Works facility. Some of the things we want them to do in addition to the basic work you'd imagine is work with our staff to identify needs. This is going to be the new home of 3 or 4 components of our Public Works departments, and we want to make sure we're thinking through what their needs are short and long term. So we want to incorporate this design professional group in doing that work, talking to them about what they need in terms of operational needs, just what makes it work best. And so this is really the opportunity to bring them on board to provide those services and get this project into the next step and the next phase. So Brad's worked with them directly. I'll let him talk a little more about where he sees this going.
What he said sounded good.
Pretty much hit everything right there.
How about number 14?
Brad coached me well. What can I say?
He has to reread and rewrite some of that stuff anyway. Now, with Tim, and we've had many discussions with Tim. I've had some discussions with staff, gone back with Tim. Their experience, they're an industrial, experienced architectural firm. They have a person on board that's worked with airport-type structures that will help us with our mechanical systems, our structural designs. I think they'll do a great job for the city in this Public Works facility.
It's a unique combination because you've got some office type of space, but you've also got industrial type of space where we're operating a fleet maintenance area. The water maintenance folks are operating out of it. So we've got to have the ability to deal with kind of multiple different types of worlds here, but we think this is a good partnership here to work with these folks, and we'll bring the professional services contract to you next time.
Number 14, discussion of proposed horse-drawn carriage operation in downtown Franklin.
We have a specific...
We'll ask you to come up in just a minute.
A specific operator here to talk about this, but let me frame it starting up. This is a proposal came to us the end of last year, and as we looked at our existing ordinances, we really found that it is neither permitted nor not permitted in our ordinances, and looked back at some of the history. In 2000, there was a specific resolution that authorized some operation of this type of service that had expired many years ago, was very specific to an operation. I think 2 or 3 years ago when, or maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I guess 2007, 2008, there had been a proposal brought forward related to pedicabs, and that had also included a horse-drawn carriage option with it. For whatever reason, that horse-drawn carriage was removed and the pedicab moved forward. So learning that history, when this proposal came forward, we thought it was worthy of having a specific discussion with you about how you might want to approach this. We do have the specific operator who has approached us, has some experience in operating in Franklin on special events, and they've made a specific proposal to us, which we would make some adjustments to, I think, from our review, but wanted to get some broader direction from you about how you'd want to handle this. Do you want to provide a specific resolution as was done in the past around this and work with that on a permissive basis? Do you want to look at amending something existing, whether it's the pedicab or the existing cab ordinance, to provide for an allowance with some specific details related to a horse-drawn carriage? Or are you just not interested in providing this service overall in the community? So that's what we are bringing before you. I'll let the operator come up and speak a little bit to what they are proposing and their experience to offer that to you. I guess one of the other options on the table is to do a temporary, allow for 90 days, 120 days, see how it goes, and see what we learn from doing this too. That's another option I think is worth looking at. So,
go ahead and tell us who you are and.
My name's Johnny L. Smith. I own and operate Sugar Creek Carriages and Dr. Moore, Mr. Stuckey, and distinguished board members. My proposal is to reintroduce horse-drawn carriages back to the city streets of Franklin. I've been doing this a very long time. We also operate on a daily basis, mostly in Nashville, and I've got well-trained horses. I am the safest company in Nashville at this point in time, but I believe the advantage to this, a lot of cities throughout the United States will bring horse-drawn carriages back into their city to revitalize the city. What we do is we do a historical tour and also tell about each business. So the advantage to this would be to attract tourists, more tourists into Franklin, and also to get people walking into the business doorways from our tour, telling them what each business provides and getting them to visit the historical buildings and different things within the area to just to get people a knowledge right off the bat when they first get into town to what there is to do here in Franklin. And it's worked in the past. That's part of the reason Nashville brought it in 30 years ago. It's been very successful there. New York has them. All the surrounding cities, Memphis. They even have them up in Pigeon Forge. I was there for 2.5 months this past summer up in Pigeon Forge, right on the boulevard there at the Red Roof Mall. So it's a positive thing, and we are a very safe company. We have a $1 million liability insurance policy in effect on each one of our carriages. And by the way, the city of Franklin would be added to our insurance policy as an additional insured, so you'd be totally covered that way. We have diaper bags on each one of our carriages to keep the droppings up, and I even have a ranch hand to come back if any of them does, drop away. We police that. So, and as far as the parking and the trafficking goes, these carriages are more maneuverable than your average compact car. Most people don't know that, but they really, truly are. They've got a fifth wheel to where they can maneuver in very tight spots. They're more narrow than your compact car, and the good thing about a carriage, a lot of the police officers downtown Nashville will let us use their parking areas because we can't leave our carriages. We don't want to leave our carriages. We have to stay in the seat, and we're always able to move the carriage. So sometimes they'll let us use the fire hydrants for parking because of that aspect. We can always move them. So that's really not an issue neither. And as far as in crowds, these horses, they work right beside fire engines. They go through the fireworks downtown Nashville. They go through very, very extreme problems there, and they're very well trained. So they're very safe. So that's about all. I mean, it's a heritage to Franklin. So, and I have been working here for the past 8 years through various special events, weddings, and I've never had a problem here at all. And I think Franklin is great. I mean, my wife adores it. Me and my wife run it, She loves Franklin here. And I've got a couple of 3 ladies here that are willing to further discuss. They're with the Heritage Foundation, and one of them's a contract driver of mine. So that's about all I have.
Okay.
You've driven, I see here during Dickens of a Christmas?
Yes, I believe it's either been 8 or 9 years, but yes, I've been here every year, and I drove that. I don't know if you've seen it, but I got a big carriage and I maneuver through the traffic and all that, and all the foot pedestrian traffic, and we're very safe.
I saw it this last year. Yes, sir.
But we're not picking a carriage company tonight. We're specifically just deciding what we need to do as far as our ordinances and so on.
What you'd like to do with the general permission of this type of operation or not, and what direction you want to give us. It's a little bit like the last one. We need some direction on how you'd like to approach it, and we can come back with some specifics.
Well, I was just going to continue to say that I did see you here in December, and I traveled to different historic areas and different, of course, Savannah and Charleston and Williamsburg and some of the other even, I guess, different smaller towns as well. And it's one of the things that helps the tourism and the ambiance of the town and things like that. So I'm very interested in discussing this.
Alderman Peterson.
I too have been, places where they've done this. I would have a concern about, and I think our information here also discusses anything on the square. I think that would be too difficult to manage because there's so much traffic there. And unlike the other places where I have seen this, we don't have very many alternate routes. Basically, unless you're going on Church or Bridge Street, you have to go Main there. And so, and then also even 3rd Avenue trying to get through there. I noticed that there was a comment about maybe having loading on 3rd Avenue, but really maybe behind City Hall might be a better place than even on 3rd Avenue itself, that the kind of the Church Street part back there for the loading. Because as I say, I'm concerned about the other traffic and whenever we've had this before, it has been a time whenever the streets were closed and people were out walking. It wasn't a time whenever our normal traffic goes through. And that may be a good point about trying to do something temporarily that was brought up. But as I say, I do have a concern about hitting those streets that are very heavily traveled, even if it is, on the limited hours that were discussed, and they certainly seem more appropriate. But I do know that even at 6 o'clock on Friday, trying to get through downtown sometimes can be pretty difficult.
Not sometimes.
Most times.
Alderman?
If we create an ordinance which requires some type of permit to be obtained, kind of walk this through me with me a little bit. So we could potentially have 3 or 4 or 5 companies coming and requesting a permit, and we could have potentially not only this gentleman company, but others coming to request a permit. At what point do we stop giving the permits? And how many, and I think this is for this young man right here, maybe not you.
I can help you a little bit on it.
Oh, okay. So I'm just seeing all these little carriages in the city from different companies on a given weekend.
I worked with the city council downtown Nashville way back 12 years ago when they first, because they didn't know what to put into the ordinances. So they come to the various carriage companies and we gave them the information to put into the ordinances. That was brought up. And that's right. If you let one in, there's going to be other carriage companies come in here and try to do it. That's why Nashville put a freeze on permits. And that was something I was going to request from you folks also, was to, I've got 9 carriages. I can handle every bit of Franklin's needs when it comes to carriages. Drivers, permitted drivers, everything.
But we can do that.
You want to be the only one.
But I don't think we can do
I do, but that's not the total reason I'm saying it, because it's true what she said. You will have other carriage companies come in here, and I'll tell you, Nashville wound up 12 years ago with 10 companies down there. They had over 20-something carriages there. Now they've got, it's either, since the regulations came through and they put a freeze on permits, they gradually dwindled down. Now I think they've got 4 or 5 permits, companies downtown Nashville. But that's a true aspect of this. And I would suggest to put a freeze on permits to where it's only my company, because I'm experienced and insured and qualified enough to handle everything there is here.
This is an issue right now that we don't have at all, so we need to look at it. We're not going to get into the business of granting an exclusive right to an operator. That's not where we want to go. But there is you can take so much. I mean, I would expect that the natural business climate would probably lend itself to how much the market would take. But
we do the same thing with liquor stores.
We can look at how this works and how much is enough. Right now, we don't have any permission, so we're looking at the mechanism to provide it for a qualified operator that, you know, fits the right mold to be able to deliver something that's going to fit and work. And so we would want to reserve rights to monitor the paths that are taken, how they operate, when the hours they operate, all, you know, all those different aspects, that it's not interfering with traffic, it's not creating a safety issue, it's not having some other negative impact. We would work in partnership with those operators, but we'd also want to have the ability to control that and make sure it's working for everybody.
Alderman McClendon.
Mayor, the only way that I see that this could realistically be done would be to treat it kind of like we would a cab company, where you have an application, you have a process for review by, you know, police, streets, what have you, you know, and then some regulatory environment that allows for the right number, whatever that is, of carriages to operate. I'm not at all interested in creating a monopoly, but I don't know, you know, I don't know how many carriages is the right number or how many companies, but I do think that we need to create, if we're going to do this at all, I think we need to create a regulatory environment in which there's a uniform, level playing field with applications and review process and nothing less stringent than we do for if somebody wanted to operate a cab company or open a liquor store. I mean, there's things that we look into before we allow. We do the same thing for cable company. You know, there's just certain criteria that we look into before we create the opportunity for somebody to do business here. And I'm not at all opposed to the notion. I think there's a certain romantic charm to it, but I also know who's going to get the phone calls the first time somebody gets hung up or something unfortunate happens. And so I just think we need to proceed with some caution and deliberate on what it is we need to know before we go putting carriages on the streets.
Alderman Skinner.
You're right, this could be a traffic hindrance issue, and without some kind of limitations, and also having a specific route that both our traffic people and the police department agree upon, that it's not going to hinder traffic. 6 o'clock on a Friday may be too early to start this.
You can't run it in Franklin, but you're not going to hinder traffic.
Well,
I'm not convinced that doing this at 6 o'clock on Friday is going to make it any worse.
well, it certainly won't make it better.
Nobody's moving more than 10, 15 miles an hour.
I agree.
The horse will go as fast as the car.
Yeah, I think they'll all be waiting. But I do think we need to think about the route, and if we just throw open the gates and say, sure, let's do it, the first guy that makes a buck, there's going to be 10, and then it's too late to put the genie back in the bottle. So we're going to do this. If we're going to do this, it needs to be in a very thoughtful way where we try to anticipate as many of these issues as we can.
Alderman Berger.
Well, whenever we're going to work on this, I think wherever we would put the carriages, I wouldn't think that I would have to sort of disagree with putting them behind City Hall down here because they wouldn't be visible at all. You need to be out, you need to be visible to the tourists, so you need to be in a prominent place. And right across the street here, we have 4 slots across the street, 4 or 5 parking slots for the sheriff. And at the times that we have down here, they're not in use because they're not at the courthouse over there. They do not use those on the weekend that I'm aware of at all. In fact, they very rarely use them anyway. but they
Share
wouldn't be.
responsibility.
Yeah, so that might be a place to be able to park them. We might look at that when we're dealing with this, if we choose to write something. Busy streets, it would have to be a must to me, I would think, to keep the carriages down Main Street, because that's where you want to be.
And that's also
Yeah.
where we need to be able to plug the different businesses
Absolutely.
and the
I mean,
historical values of Franklin.
You're promoting Franklin in these carriage rides.
Well, we should be paying these.
Yeah.
That's why cities ask carriage companies to come in to revitalize the city, and it works.
Part of economic development, but you have to be on the busy streets, and the other night I was down in Nashville, and I was right behind a carriage, and it was as crowded as I've ever seen it, with the Simay Center letting out, and a carriage was right there, and they were maneuvering just fine.
You don't have any electric horses, do you?
No.
We'd all say about horses, we have some electric horses. We got a station for you to plug into.
I think it has to be visible to tourists, so when we're thinking about writing this up, it has to be on Main Street, and I think a set route is a given.
There's one
that's
thing
standard.
about a specific route that I want to bring to your attention. A set specific route, it's better if you do a perimeter, because that gives you the opportunity to be able to vary off of congestive areas. It's safer that way. And even if it's a small perimeter, to stay inside that perimeter, that way it's safer, and you tie up traffic less. If you see traffic's getting backed up, you can veer and go around the alley and come back in. So a perimeter works much better, in my opinion.
Alderman Blanton.
Well, the last comment I just
I'm
had,
sorry.
is that when we decide to go ahead, if we decide to go ahead with this and write it, I think we do need to be speaking with you and other carriage drivers to get input of those kinds of things, because you're in that business and you have a lot of good insights, and I think we need to be hearing from that before we reinvent the wheel, so to speak, to write something. That's all I have to say.
I think anything that lends to I think it's a great idea. I think that we need to decide, I think the biggest thing is, do we want it on Main Street or not? And in looking at your proposal for your route, it looks like the back alley tour of Franklin as opposed to the downtown, because you've got it going behind Starbucks, behind Ivy Cake, behind Baskin Robbins, and that to me kind of totally negates the whole quaintness and aesthetic value of a tour.
I think you're reading that wrong. That's a perimeter.
Okay.
That I stay within.
Okay.
That's the way it was meant. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's the way it totally presented differently, so that's great to know.
What we're wanting to do tonight doesn't necessarily need to be specific to the route.
Right.
No, but there's a
That you
lot
have
of
an approved
things.
route is, I think, pretty, we need to know that.
And what you need to do is see what Pigeon Forge's ordinance looks like, what Nashville's ordinance looks like, who Philadelphia's ordinance looks like, whoever ordinance.
Small town.
Yeah.
Small things.
Yeah. Go for it and see what it does. We had the carriage here in 2000 and it lasted
A year.
or less, and they parked it on the square, and it was two of them. I guess it was two of them, wasn't it? I think it was two. And I guess for the lack of a better term, it just wasn't enough business to justify even the two.
Alderman Martin.
Well, I do remember many times that we've had carriages here. They've been wonderful. Certainly, people who are trying to fly through town get very aggravated. I don't know that the carriages didn't add a lot to the control of the traffic.
It does.
If you go down Main Street, and if the carriage is down Main Street and you have to slow down, maybe you'll go somewhere else, go around some other way. So I think there's not anything but good to come from this.
Now, do
And
you
I
have
would
big
like to see it.
subwoofers that you can put in these things?
A company did try that in Nashville, and the clients did not.
I want you rattling windows.
The clients wanted to hear the tours, so it wasn't a good idea for that particular carriage company.
Let me remind you, though, that in some ways, our downtown is unique in the sense that we have the river around it and we have the railroad. We do not have a lot of optional ways to get
It's not
through.
Nashville, yeah.
That's really. and
Second
that-
Avenue from start to finish is a whole Main Street plus.
And the places that I've been, you know, in other cities.
We're a grid though, and that's an easy way to get through.
Well, but as I say, you don't have many options if you're coming through. If you're going through the 16 blocks, you do not have very many options. And so whenever you're saying they won't come that way, you know, whenever they close up just for the festivals and everything, people have a lot of problems there. So I'm just saying we need to be cognizant of that, and it's not just that they can just go 2 blocks over, because there's no 2 blocks over.
I can give you guys.
3 blocks over.
Well, I think another part of what we need to look at is what's the parameter of operating hours, because you referred to the pedicab. I was very aware of when all that went on. I was a good friend of mine that started that business, and it took 6 months for her to get that. I mean, 6 months to get that, and she was part of writing the ordinance because there wasn't anything to compare it to. And I think she was asked by BOMA at that time to compare it to Charleston because that was the closest thing that had a pedicab. Obviously, this isn't something new to the world, but to talk to Nashville, to talk to Pigeon Forge and some of the other places that have it, we are unique. We're smaller scale. We don't have a lot of the room that those places have, but you know, if you're functioning from 6 to 10, which is one of the things you talked about time-wise, are there lights on the carriage?
There's lights, there's actually LED lights.
Okay,
They're
that's
very-
good. I mean,
very
but there's
good
just-
bright lights, you can see them a long ways, they got reflector triangles on them. These carriages, and these are factory-made carriages, by the way, from a carriage factory. And they've got hydraulic brakes on them, they've got blinkers, they've got stoplights, so, and we run downtown Nashville during fanfare when it's, I've been in gridlock for 45 minutes at a time with my poor horse sitting there pawing at the pavement wanting to go. But we've been in some ridiculously thick traffic where there's limos on one side of us, a fire engine on the other side, and a police car's in front of us with his sirens going trying to get around all the traffic. Can't do it. So the traffic is, and I'll give you some more information too. The horses travel between 5.5 miles per hour at a walk to 6.5 miles an hour. And what my company does in Nashville and anywhere else, when we go through a green light and we're turning, we try to trot just a little bit to get on through so that we're not hampering traffic to make the turn or whatever it may be. But we do trot through the lights to speed it up a little bit.
All right, we'll see you at 7 o'clock.
You don't feed them beefaroni, do you?
I give them molasses every now and then.
What? Seinfeld episode.